Macca's Guides.
Hey everyone, Macca here, and this is the Doom Eternal Ancient Gods 2 DLC. Welcome back to my 100% full game walkthrough. I covered the game in the first DLC and will be covering this DLC in a similar fashion. I will take you through each and every mission, and I'll show you each and every single thing you can grab. Things like Codex pages, hammer upgrades, extra lives, and more. I'll even give you a couple of tips and tricks for all of the battles. I'll show you where the BFG ammo is, and if you beat this DLC following this video, you should have it complete, but there is an extra lives mode specific achievement or trophy if you want to pay attention to that. The first new mechanic of this DLC is the Meat Hook Grapple Point, and we'll get a little bit of a tutorial here. The way this works is you use your Super Shotgun Meat Hook ability to latch on, and then you can steer yourself in the air in order to make it across gaps. There's quite a bit of platforming in this DLC, so we'll keep that in mind. And we're also going to be able to kind of go around corners and then, you know, pair that up with double jumps and double dashes. Once you make it up to this area, this is kind of the first fight you'll need to do, and it'll introduce a new type of enemy. You'll get a short tutorial that should show up on screen when it happens, and it is called the Screecher. It's an extremely delicate enemy that will die from a hit of pretty much anything, and if it dies, it will screech and pretty much empower all of the enemies nearby. What this means is that you want to kill all of the enemies, but make sure you keep these Screechers alive, or else it becomes a lot harder. If the Screecher is the last enemy alive, it will automatically die once all of the other enemies are cleared out. Here I accidentally do hit a Screecher, so there is a little bit of a buff applied to some of the enemies. The buff is actually pretty strong in my opinion, and if I didn't mention, I am playing on the normal Hurt Me Plenty difficulty. Also, if it's not obvious, you should have pretty much everything unlocked. That's all the weapons, all the weapon mods. You'll have the ability to obviously use freeze grenades, regular grenades, your belch, and everything else. So you should be pretty well equipped for this DLC. It is pretty tough, and there are sections with a lot of enemies, and even on my Xbox Series X, I did get a little bit of frame rate chug, which made me laugh. This game technically isn't optimized for the next-gen consoles, so I'm not really too surprised, but a little bit surprised. Anyways, once you clear out all of the enemies, you can bash your way through the wall on the left-hand side of the area, and then you can grapple up onto the point in order to release the hound, and then follow the hound to the fountain. For this section, just stay within the walls of smoke and fog. If you do leave, you lose a lot of health. There will be a buff totem nearby, which will buff all the enemies. Unfortunately, it's too deep into all of the fog in order to get it without taking way too much damage. So just stay alive. I recommend the Super Shotgun. It's pretty useful here. Also, the enemies aren't too hard, so feel free to do things like boost your armor, health, and ammo by doing the appropriate actions like freezing, using your meat hook. Maybe you want to belch or anything like that. Just build up as much as you can just to have it for the next area, as the next area can be a little bit difficult but isn't too bad. Once the fog falls, sprint to the middle of the area where a bunch of pinkies will spawn, and you'll also have the blood punch abilities spawn in the middle. Those are the yellow fists. Take those out with your blood punch. That's going to be the easiest way to take out pinkies during this entire DLC, and then take care of the buff totem, and we can now go to the next area. When you reach the next area, you'll be introduced to the next new enemy type, and this enemy is called the Armored Baron. It's not fully new, but it has some new mechanics. It is armored, and the only way to disarmor it is by using the plasma rifle's lock-on ability, and then once you break off that armor, you can hurt it at its normal health. However, if you're not quick enough or you don't freeze it, for example, it will regain that armor, and then you'll have to break the armor again in order to do enough damage. The enemy usually does spawn with minor enemies around it, so you can farm ammo off of them just in case you run out of plasma rifle. And then you can just run up the ramp where the large tentacle will spawn. Whatever ammo you're comfortable using, I had a lot of shotgun ammo, so I'm going to take it out with my regular shotgun here and the grenade rounds, but you can also just use like 3 or 4 rockets to take out the tentacle, and then move up the ramp and you'll find a ton of enemies here, which will obviously need to take out. As there will be a BFG ammo pickup coming up in one of the next fights, I would recommend using your BFG at some point here. Just make sure that if you are using it, you do break the Armored Baron's armor first so that the BFG actually does some damage. That's my recommended tip, but it is up to you how you actually end up doing it. It's also pretty easy to finish off the Armored Baron with a plasma rifle, assuming you do have enough ammo, which I unfortunately did not. If you do run out of ammo, you'll either need to find more or use a chainsaw. I think I mentioned that already, so keep that in mind. If you completely run out of ammo and completely run out of chainsaw, and there are no barrels or anything around, you may actually be in like a soft lock fail state where you can't actually beat this enemy. I'm not really sure. I guess there is a way to run out of ammo completely and then never have enough to take him out. But either way, take him out, and then that will spawn another wave of enemies. Try to get your blood punches ready, as there are a lot of Mancubus and Cyber Mancubus. They are most easily taken care of using the blood punch. For some reason, it seems to do more damage to them than any other enemy, really. Just keep fighting all these enemies until you spawn yet another wave. The wave after the one with the Mancubus will just be a ton of imps. And then before we leave this area, we can also grab another collectible. So we're going to keep that in mind before we leave. Once all the imps are spawning, as you see on my screen, a good tip is to try to get them in a big group and then use your flame belch and your ice grenade, and you can just farm an absolute truckload of health and armor to make sure that you are full before leaving the area. Once all of the enemies are taken out, you should reach a checkpoint. If you go to the far back left corner from where we entered, you should be able to notice this corner here. There was a little bit of gas for our chainsaw, and we can now click this button in. This button doesn't appear until after the fight is done, by the way, but it'll open up a cage with an extra life 1-up that is near the area we are going towards for the checkpoint and progression of the level. Once we come around this corner, we will have this kind of blue push pad that is inactive. So what we have to do is jump down and then dash and double dash into a wall in order to grab on. Then we can dash into this push plate and then through the wall, and we'll end up back where we just were, but we'll now have the ability to have that push plate, which will bring us to the highest level. And we can now use the swing bar to end up on the balcony. Don't overshoot it like me. It ends up being really awkward. Then just continue towards the objective. You'll also have an empowered Revenant, so just take them out and then go to the next area. You'll have some pretty easy fights there. In the next room after the fights, you will be picking up BFG ammo. So again, if you're maxed out with 2, make sure you use 1 so you can actually pick up the BFG ammo, or else you're kind of just wasting your time. Once all the enemies are taken care of, you'll reach a checkpoint and will have to light the torch using that dog through the wall there. So there's a lot of platforming, but before we do that platforming, if you make your way into this far back room, you'll notice the BFG ammo. Make sure you explode all of the containers inside before going in. As soon as you do grab the BFG ammo, enemies will spawn behind you. It'll be 2 mancubi, and just take care of them in order to be allowed to exit. If you don't blow up the barrels before you enter, it can get a little, it's a little bit of a sticky situation in there. Then go around the corner and grab the rad suit. You'll make your way into this rad pool. The rad refill will be in the middle of the room every, few seconds. And a bunch of enemies will spawn also. And a screecher will spawn. So we're going to try to keep that screecher alive as we always do. Sometimes it works out great. Sometimes it barely works out at all. Just stay alive. Make sure you keep grabbing the rad suit in the middle, or else you end up taking damage like me for absolutely no reason. And then you should be good to go. As soon as you take care of all of the enemies, the doors will open and you can now leave. Then what we'll do is we'll just follow the path through the wall. This will spawn another enemy. Feel free to take them out. Then use the wall and the hook thing to just basically double jump, double dash to a ledge. Coming up here is a little bit of platforming that isn't immediately obvious a lot of the times. If you do get stuck, feel free to obviously reference the video and or open up your map, and it can sometimes give you an idea of which way the game wants you to go. But some of these jumps are just not as obvious and intuitive as I would personally like. But obviously, if you're playing this DLC, there's a good chance you beat the campaign and the first DLC. So it kind of makes sense that they're really making the game a little bit harder and more complicated. Once you reach up here, you can drop down and then interact with that dog or power source. I don't really know. I try my best to stay up to date with the Doom terminology, but it's just not my strength. I'm much better at trying to figure out the levels and the collectibles and stuff like that. But once they do go in the middle, you'll have another kind of fog of war battle, and you'll also be in the slow goo. There will be a screecher, so don't shoot the screecher if you don't need to. Again, if you take out all of the enemies and the screecher's the last one, they will automatically die. There will also be 2 mancubuses that spawn, or mancubi that spawn. And once you take care of all of them, you'll be able to approach a door, and then there will be another fight. Once you reach this checkpoint, it seems like you can just run through the door, but instead we're actually going to get locked back in with some cyber mancubi. The strategy I would recommend is to take out your plasma rifle right away, pick up the quad damage, and this will make extremely quick work of these enemies. They'll also explode when you drain them and kill all of the enemies around them as well. And you can take this battle and make it like 10 seconds instead of like a minute and a half. And then the door will open and go interact with the power source. And this is the hammer that we'll be using for the remainder of the DLC. And we'll also be able to use upgrades on it. This is called the Sentinel hammer. The way it works is that you fill it up by doing glory kills and by destroying weak points of enemies. You can also just pick up refills on the battlefield that are kind of these red hammer icons, so that's a good thing to do as well. If there are a bunch inside of an area of a fight, that means you can use the hammer a few times and not worry. Using the hammer will stun the enemy and make them drop a bunch of ammo. And you can also combine this with things like your freeze in order to get extra health, or you can combine this with something like your belch in order to get extra armor. This is going to be a very important mechanic to the game, and in many cases it's pretty advantageous to do both burn, freeze, and hammer on a large group of enemies. If you're playing on Xbox, hopefully your game doesn't crash, as it really does stress the code of the game. But if you do it correctly, you'll basically have full armor, full health, and full ammo within pretty much an instant, which is going to be really useful for a lot of fights, like this fight, which is actually very difficult. There will be an empowered revenant when you start, and there also will likely be a spirited enemy, so it'll be a arachnotron that is glowing blue. It spawns about halfway through the fight, I think, but when you kill it, the spirit will escape. This is a mechanic out of the first DLC, and when the spirit escapes from the enemy, you must kill it before it inherits another being. And to do that, you need to pull out your plasma rifle and then do the connector shot in order to drain it. And this is the only way to properly kill the spirit in this game. So they are, forcing us to use certain combinations, so you don't just kill everything with your super shotgun all the time. So there's gonna be a lot of weapon switching. They're actually gonna force us to use the shotgun auto mod, which I thought would never be useful. But just take care of all of the enemies. There's quite a bit of enemies here. Feel free, if you want, you can use a BFG ammo. There will be a BFG ammo coming up in the next like 5 or 10 minutes. And this is probably the harder of all the fights before the next BFG. So it's up to you. You can use it here or you can use it in the next fight. But there will be a lot of enemies that spawn at the end. So if you do use your BFG, save it for the big guys. Once the fight is over, just run around the room and look for any extra ammo that you may have missed on your first time through the fight, and then we can exit out the room by following the checkpoint at the top of the screen. And here we can pick up a bunch of rocket ammo and shotgun ammo, and we'll be introduced to a new mechanic. This mechanic is the Stone Imp, and in order to kill the Stone Imp, you will need to use the regular combat shotgun while in full auto mode of all things. So that's the only way this enemy can die. I think you can also use the Sentinel hammer on it, but you probably want to save those for different enemy types that are more useful. It seems like it feels like it could be a hard thing to use, but it's actually pretty easy. You just want to get nice and close to the enemy and then use the fully auto shotgun and pick up any ammo that you need. That's probably the biggest problem with this, is having enough ammo to make sure you can get through the fight. So that's why I said you should get nice and close. If you do it from too far, you're probably going to waste a lot of bullets. You can also use the hammer here. I think I'm going to use my hammer because there's a hammer pickup, but I'm pretty sure I kind of pressed the wrong buttons, got flustered, and I panicked, and I don't even know if I hit anyone with that hammer. But it doesn't really matter because I'm pretty good on ammo and armor and everything anyways, so we're good to go. And then as soon as we finish this area, we can hop up onto the ledge and we can actually grab a secret extra life that is hidden in the top of this area. So hop up on this ledge, use the swing bar to get across, and then instead of following and jumping again, going across the panels, turn around and then go diagonally, kind of where we came from, but land inside of the sewer entrance up here. There's a secret area and you can get an extra life 1-up. And then what we can do is basically just make our way back down and then go back up and kind of go along the normal path. If you notice that the amount of extra lives I have in the top left corner kind of changes from scene to scene, it's because I play these levels 4 or 5 times and then kind of stick together different playthroughs to make sure you guys are getting the best viewing experience. Use the grapple meat hook and then go to the next area. You'll get a cutscene, which I'll obviously skip as I don't really do the story stuff. I do more of the gameplay stuff in these videos. And as soon as you spawn, walk forward and a ton of enemies will spawn. 2 revenants, 2 invisible pinkies. You'll end up getting 2 arachnotrons. You'll end up getting like 2 barons and stuff like that. There's also, I think, 2 full pickups for the Sentinel hammer. And there are rocket ammo pickups on the path down the hill. There's also the meat hook in the middle you can use to kind of navigate around if you need to. But you can also, if you are full on BFG ammo, I would recommend you use one of your BFG bullets during this fight, as we will be picking up another bullet very soon here, and there's really not another fight from here to the next BFG pickup. So take your time, take care of all of the enemies. Hopefully you do a little bit better than I do with some of my weapon choices and whatnot. Blood punch is very useful as well, and then we can move forward. With all of the enemies cleared out and the checkpoint is now reached, make sure you pick up all of the ammo around, pick up some health and armor, and any of the Sentinel hammer ammo you can pick up. Then we'll have to meat hook over this, and then double dash meat hook again, swing and double dash to get to our next location. Pick up the gas for the chainsaw if you need it, and then follow the path up here. There's armor on the ledge up here. And then if you go across this gap, a cyber mancubus will spawn. Just take care of them. 4 other smaller enemies will spawn. There is an Automap location that is pretty much right next to me, but I'm obviously going to take care of the enemies first. With everything taken care of, go back to where we jumped across that gap where the Cybermancubus spawned and interact with the Automap. You don't need the Automap, but I always show them in my videos just in case you need to backtrack or if you miss something. You can always take a look at your map at the end of the level just in case. Here there's also a 2 life, extra life, 1 up, or 2 up I guess. And to do this one, it's a little bit tricky, but you just want to swing as high as you can, then double jump, double dash, and try to get back to safety. If you don't get back to safety, you'll land in the abyss underneath, and you'll just take a little bit of damage. Here, there will be a BFG ammo that we're going to grab, and there's also a Codex page, which you will need to grab pretty much right in front of us. That one's really hard to miss, but something you're really going to want to grab if you do want all the achievements, trophies, and all that stuff. Use the meat hook to get up onto this ledge. Do not proceed forward. Instead, we're going to grab that BFG bullet by jumping into it, and then basically we can double dash back to safety or use the meat hook to get back up on the climbable wall. You can also just meat hook straight into the BFG bullet, but I found that that's a lot harder and it can end up with just wasting a bunch of life for no reason. You can then walk forward into this hallway and a bunch of barrels will spawn and a ton of enemies will spawn. Wait for the enemies to actually come in with you before you shoot the barrels. I ended up shooting them a little bit early just to protect myself, but I do have, you will have the rune where the barrels respawn and they create ammo, so that's pretty useful. And then all you're going to want to do is once the pinkies spawn, use the blood punches which spawn along the sides. For some reason, I don't know if I wasn't picking them up or if I was just not paying attention, but they were not really getting my blood punches for a while there. But this is basically just a room that is created to refill all of your ammo through actual gameplay. Then what we can do is just follow the path towards the checkpoint. As we enter, we will now find a gore nest, which has an escalation encounter. This is a new mechanic in the Ancient Gods 2 DLC. This works like a normal gore nest, but the first time you use it, it is mandatory or else you can't leave the area. This will give you a Sentinel hammer upgrade, which is going to be really useful. Obviously, it'll do things like do more damage or a longer daze, and it'll also generate more ammo for you when you do use your Sentinel hammer. Things that are going to be very, very helpful and useful later on. Now, once you interact with the escalation contract or with the gore nest, a bunch of enemies will spawn and you're going to have to take care of all of the enemies in this wave in order to complete the first escalation. Now, there is a second escalation where this is completely optional. The only thing you unlock from the second escalation is a cosmetic item, and you don't actually need to do them in order to technically get like 100% completion in terms of the achievements or trophies, but it does technically count as a collectible. In order to save time, I'm not going to be showing 2 runs of the escalation because the second phase is pretty similar. It just ends up having slightly harder enemies. So all you end up doing is just juggling your ammo more, saving some of your better ammo and abilities for the second wave. And then at the end of all of that, you will end up with a cosmetic item. So if you are just looking to get all of the achievements and trophies and the important stuff, you can just do 1 wave. But if you are a full-on completionist and you are interested in even grabbing all of the cosmetic items possible, then you will need to do 2 waves each time you encounter one of these nests. Don't worry, I will show each nest during the playthrough. And you are free to use BFG ammo here if you want. This fight's not too hard in my opinion, so maybe we'll save it. And there's also a couple of Sentinel hammer pickups around the map, which we'll use just to help us generate a little bit of health, armor, and ammo. That's going to be up to you, and then we can move on once we are done. Now, once you complete your escalation contract, you'll be told what your reward is. For us, it is a Sentinel hammer upgrade that allows us to get more ammo when we do use this weapon. And you can do the escalation encounter a second time for a harder variant in order to unlock an optional cosmetic. It's up to you, but for the sake of keeping the video a reasonable length, for the sake of keeping as many lives as I can, I'm not sure if dying in an escalation actually counts against your life total. And just to make sure, you know, I keep the video at a pretty concise pace, I am going to skip the second encounter. Feel free to do it if you are interested in cosmetic items, though. Here we are told that using the Sentinel hammer on an enemy like the Armored Baron or the Marauder will increase the amount of time that they are in the staggered state, so you can do more DPS. That's up to you and how you play. But this section's pretty easy. It's just a little bit long because the enemies are all kind of in waves, and there's usually one enemy that just takes a while. And there's always going to be fodder around the outside in order to help you garner a little bit more ammo. Once taking care of all of the enemies, we can now get up by using the swing pole and then double jumping, double dashing onto a grab wall. And then once we do reach the top here, you will automatically be locked in, and we will be reintroduced to the Blood Maker enemy. This is the enemy from the last DLC that glows gold. It will only be available to kill through a small percentage of guns, and only have a weak point available to you when it is in the air trying to fire at you and not glowing gold. So basically, all you want to do is just have a lot of movement in order to not take a lot of damage from all of the minor enemies. And then when the Bloodmaker does go up, in order to try to do damage to you, you're just going to use your precision bolt and grab a quick 360 no scope on its head in order to move on. The good thing about the Bloodmaker, though, also is that they do generate ammo every time you kill them. So it is a good way to, you know, get rocket ammo, get your shotgun ammo, and everything else you might need. Once all of the enemies are taken out, the gates will open, and then we can continue forward. Right here, we'll need to swing on these bars, and a giant tentacle will come and smack us. This is inevitable. No matter what I tried, I wasn't able to dodge this. So we will fall down and then have to take it out. I ended up using my ballista because I had a lot of extra plasma ammo that I didn't really need. So then there's also going to be two arachnotrons, and I don't know what this enemy is. I'm really bad with enemy names. If you've watched this series long enough, I'm sure you already know that. But then you can now navigate your way back up the same way we came. Use the swing bars in order to get to the top and then get to the next area. After swinging across and going through the gate, we'll trigger a cutscene, which for these videos I'm obviously skipping, and now we're just going to basically have a ton of platforming. You'll jump down, double dash onto a wall where you can grab on. We can then jump and go across on the right hand side, and we will try to make our way to a far Meat Hook Grapple Point where we can grapple through it and then land on the wall behind. As soon as we land on the wall behind, jump off to the right-hand side, landing on the ledge. Then look across the gap and use your gun to shoot open the gate and get across to reach the next checkpoint. Even more platforming after that. I recommend the heavy assault rifle for this. Drop down and grab up on this wall, move to the right-hand side, shoot open the gate here, swing across and double dash onto this ledge, double jump, double dash onto this swing bar, opening the little gate, and then the last door to make your way through into the last area. You can also pick up your Codex page here. You can then pick up the crystal in the middle of the room, and this will pretty much end the level. At the end screen, I will be shown 3 out of 4 for exploration, as I didn't do the cosmetic optional encounter, but otherwise I did show you everything, including extra lives and BFG ammo. Thank you so much for watching. I will have a second video for the second mission, and I hope you join me there. A special thanks to everyone on Patreon for supporting the show. Peace.